Hi knitters, it's Mimi with Pastiche Knitwear. Today I am so excited to show you my signature bind-off trio. I've been working on this for many years and have finally come up with a bind-off edging that overcomes the role of stockinette stitch. So you can see on the sample that we have 3 rounds of horizontally lying knit stitches. And so the first is a lateral braid, the second is Chinese waitress bind-off, and the third is a slip stitch crochet. I'm going to show you how to do this in the round because I use it most often in top-down garment construction. Now what's great about this technique is that you don't have to add any other ribbing or garter stitch or seed stitch to the bottom of a garment. And so it gives it just a really clean, modern look, and I love it. I also use this to finish necklines and sleeves as well. So I didn't come up with these techniques, I just put them together, and so I want to show you how to do this. So the first technique we're going to do is the lateral braid. Now I love the lateral braid and have used it for years, but I was using older techniques to create it. This one I got from Elizabeth Doherty, and I think it's brilliant. Over the years I've had lots of students that have struggled with this, so I wanted to show you the easy way to do it. So when we begin a lateral braid, we always want to start by adding a stitch so that that braid actually lies down horizontally. What I like to do is take my left needle tip under that horizontal strand, and then I'm going to take my right needle tip, I'm going to come behind, grab that back leg, and just twist that stitch and stick it back on. Actually, I see that I've split my stitch here, so I'm going to fix that. Distracting, eh? All right, so the technique itself is quite straightforward. You yarn over, knit 2 together through the back loop, and then replace that worked stitch back on the left-hand needle. Let's do it again. Yarn over, knit 2 together through the back loop, and replace. Yarn over, knit 2 together through the back loop, and replace. Now I'd like to show you what to do, so we'll take a look at that. We can see there's our beautiful braid beginning. The easiest way to mess this up is to forget to replace the last worked stitch back on the left-hand needle. So I actually did that on purpose. I didn't replace it because I want to show you what it looks like when you do that and also how to fix it, because pretty much I think when you're learning there's a high likelihood that this may happen. All right, so let me do a couple more just so we can eyeball it, see what it looks like. All right, so here's our beautiful braid, there's our bollocks, and we have the braid that continues afterwards. So the easiest thing to do is just slip these off. No gasping, friends, it's all going to be fine. Gently pull on your live end, then you're just going to rescue these stitches. They're not going anywhere. Just slip your needle right back in there, and then replace that last work stitch back over, and then you're good to go again. So another way to double check yourself, friends, is that when you begin this process, the live end should be attached to the first stitch on the left-hand needle, which is not typical, okay? So yarn over, knit 2 together through the back loop, and replace. Now I am going to continue working on this, and I'm going to meet you at the end so that I can show you how we're going to join that braid together. So I will see you in just a bit. Okay, so here we are at the end, and I'm going to show you how to know where your last stitch is. The easiest way is to remember that you began with a yarn over, and there it is. This is my last normal looking stitch there, so I've got one more to do, and then we are finished with that round. Now I'm going to show you how to join this braid together so we have this beautiful unbroken line. True confession is I have been making this video over and over, so at this point you want to cut your yarn. You will notice that my yarn is already cut, but just leave yourself a tail, and then let's grab a tapestry needle. So to get rid of the extra stitch that we made at the beginning, we're going to take this last braid stitch, just pull it off, and then just pull it straight through to the front. And now I'm going to thread this end up on my tapestry needle. And then we're going to come across to the beginning here. I don't want to go into the first stitch. I'm going to cover that up. I'm going to come into the second stitch here with my tapestry needle. Just run my needle under that stitch. I usually come from bottom to top, but I don't think it really matters. Then I'm going to come right back in where my yarn is coming out. Don't come from back to front. Make sure you come from front to back. And then I'm just going to pull until that stitch matches the rest of the braid. And so it's beautiful, it's unbroken, and that's what we want. So this is the first technique of the 3. So I will meet you back here for the Chinese waitress bind off. See you in a minute. Okay friends, here we are back for the second of our trio of techniques to make this bind off. And so it's the Chinese waitress bind off. I do have separate videos on how to do this, but I did want to show this bind off technique all together so that you had all the elements there. I'm going to be showing you the first way, which I recommend for English knitters, continental knitters. You can certainly do this, but I did find another way with a crochet hook that's pretty amazing. So anyway, let's give this a go. So I'm going to reattach my yarn. I'm going to leave a tail, and I'm just going to drape that tail to the back, leaving, about the same amount as what I left before. So just to review, when we're doing Chinese waitress bind off, we're going to be doing 2 things. We're going to be purling, we're going to be doing yarn overs. Every time we purl, we're going to throw the yarn the wrong way. So let's get started. This is a setup that we do only once, so we're going to begin with a purl, coming the wrong way, so coming underneath, then a proper yarn over, and then another purl, throwing the yarn the wrong way. Now I like to take my yarn to the back, and what you'll see here, what we're left with is 3 stitches. Right here it actually looks like a double stitch. What we need to do on this very first one is just take your thumbnail and pull that down, and you can see then the 3 stitches. This is the first purl we did, the yarn over, and the purl. So we're going to bind off the center stitch, that yarn over, and then bind off the first purl stitch. So we're left with, I'm going to pull on that, tighten that up. We are left with 1 purl stitch. So from now on, we don't have to do that beginning one. We're just going to be doing a yarn over and then a purl throwing the wrong way. Now, for my English knitters, because I have put the yarn behind me, I have to bring the yarn forward twice, because I have to bring it forward in order to purl and then around again for a yarn over. So what it feels like is a double yarn over. And that is actually what I say to myself, because it's just easier for me. So I've done my yarn is behind. Yarn over, and then I'm going to purl the wrong way. Bring the yarn to the back, and then bind off the center stitch and bind off the first stitch. Now I have tried doing this together, yarn over, purl the wrong way, yarn to the back. I've tried going in both of these at the same time and dragging them over. I just found it to be messier looking, and I didn't like the look of it. Give it a try though. You might be actually have a better success rate than I do. So it's yarn over, throw the yarn the wrong way, yarn to the back, and then bind them off in succession. Now let me do a couple that are continental. So you yarn over, bring the yarn forward, and then you're throwing the yarn the wrong way, so you're coming under the stitch rather than over the stitch. Now in this one, I don't bother with where my yarn is sitting. I just bind these off. So it's yarn over, and then purl the wrong way underneath. And then you bind off the center stitch, whoops, and the first stitch. You can tell that I don't knit continental every day. All right, But there we are, and you can see you've got the lateral braid running this direction, and then the Chinese waitress is running the opposite direction. So I'm going to, once again, I'm going to continue around here, and then I will meet you back to show you how to finish. We're going to do one round of slip stitch crochet, and then we are going to finish off and weave all our ends in so that it looks beautiful. So I'll meet you back for that. Okay, so here we are at the end of the Chinese waitress bind off. You can see I have one stitch left on my right hand needle tip, and what I'm going to do is just pull this out a little bit, the needle, and I'm going to replace it with a crochet hook commensurate size. Now I've got a couple of ends here, so let's take a look at them. This is actually what I added in at the beginning, so I'm going to actually tension in my left hand because it is crochet. And even if you are a knitter and you don't know how to crochet, I'm going to teach you how to do this. This is very simple, and I feel strongly that all knitters should at least know how to do a single crochet. This is not even that, this is just a slip stitch crochet. So because the Chinese waitress bind off is a double chain bind off, if we kind of roll this toward ourselves, we can see we've got one chain that runs this way and the other chain runs the opposite way. I want to grab the top leg right here, and that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to see what I'm doing here. Yes, right here, and I'm going to come underneath it with my crochet hook. Let me tighten that up a little bit. I'm going to yarn around the hook, bring it back under that leg, and then back through the stitch that's on the hook, and that's all we're going to do. Remember, roll this towards yourself, come under the top leg, yarn around the hook, bring it back under the leg, and then through the stitch that's on the hook. So you're going to go all the way around and do this. Now, I know there are probably a couple of you who are saying, she said she was going to show us how to do it in the round, and yet she's working on a flat piece. That's only because I'm lazy, but I'm showing you, I'm just stranding it across the back is what I'm doing. Like if I do a gauge swatch in the round, this is what I do too, just because I'm essentially lazy. So anyway, I'm going to continue around. One thing I did want to say though is that what's trickiest about this as you're learning it is getting the gauge or the tension of all these to be the same. And on this one, these all look pretty even. I've done this a lot though. Sometimes I've had them though where one was really visibly larger than the other. You can pop down a needle size or a hook size. Just play with it and you're going to find just the right combination. So I'm going to continue on here, and then I'm going to come all the way around, and then I'm going to show you how to do all your little burying of ends and tidying up. So I will again see you back here in a bit. Here we are at the end, and I have finished my slip stitch crochet. I've cut my yarn, and I have the one stitch left on my hook, which I'm now going to just pull out straight through that last stitch. I'm going to thread up my needle, and we're going to do just as we did on the lateral braid, which is we're going to skip one stitch, bring the needle under that second stitch, and then bring the needle back through from front to back, right where that yarn is coming out. So we're replicating or covering that in between stitch, like so. Now the only other thing we have to address is the beginning of the Chinese waitress, the actually beginning and ending this stitch to this stitch. You can see there's a little divot there. It's not perfect. So the yarn is back here, and I'm going to pull that out. I believe it's this. There it is. Now one thing I'm going to do is when I bring this over, we're going to do the same thing we did, but the opposite, coming the opposite direction. I don't want to see this leg here, so I'm going to first thread this up. Then I'm just going to come underneath that leg with my needle because that way it'll be on the interior when I finish this. So I'm going to come across here. This is the first stitch. I'm going to skip over that one. I'm going to come in the second stitch here. So we're doing the same thing we've been doing, but coming the opposite direction. So I come over and then once again come right back in where your thread was coming out and pull that to match the tension. And that, my dears, is how we have a perfect join on all 3 tiers of this bind off. So I really hope that you will give this a try and let me know how it goes. I will say this also. Sometimes when you have finished this, you will, before you block it, it will flip up a little bit. It will not once you block it, I promise you. I've done this on literally 8 tops at least, different varieties of it, and I have no problems with it. So let me know how it goes. As always, if these videos are helpful, please consider subscribing, and you have a great one.